Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of KP Talks. I am here with Alex, Mr. Cool, and we're going to talk a little bit about Verstael. Alex, how you been?
Good mate, good mate, good to be here. Safe.
Yeah, you sent me a little DM a few weeks ago talking about Idolus, and I thought you were trolling me. I'm not going to lie. Like I knew the card was good, but I didn't realize you were going to actually play a deck with the card and with Verstael. Just throwing that out there. And when I saw you in the tournament playing it, you know how many pings I got? Oh, it's
The crazy part is that all of my North American friends, when I tell them I'm going to do something, or give them little clues like that and things like that, none of them believe me. And I thought you were one of the real ones, KP, but yeah, hopefully I've proved it now.
oh man. So what uh what brought you onto this deck? And is this your first idea of the new set, or did you have any other deck ideas, or tell me something about that?
So I did my set review for this set, and I haven't done one for a couple of sets now. Mainly because I've just gotten to this point where I do them if I'm either interested in the set or interested in like what I expect the kind of meta to look like and how the set's going to impact that. And just the last two sets, obviously we've had or last three sets, we've had quite a few restrictions in there with the light and dark cards, with Una and Chaos and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a really kind of strange meta game for the past year, and this was the first set I looked at it and I kept getting excited over and over again by all the spoilers coming out. And then I go to do my review, and yeah, it's just a lot of cards that I'm like, this is the baseline for like something entirely new, or something like Verstael that is effectively so old that we literally had to kind of dig out all these old cards to formulate the deck. So Edelas wasn't like the first thing I saw and was like, yeah, let's build a deck. I think that was always gonna be Bart's for its natural synergy with Ward 7. But I definitely wanted to see if this deck could or if Verstael could make a comeback purely off the back of such a powerful backup.
Yeah, I remember the last time we talked about Verstael was obviously when it was Fire Ice and all that stuff. And I remember you sending me a picture of whiffing. Uh, but also, speaking of that, it's like you only have six cards in this deck that can be a miss. So is it six? Yeah, six.
Yeah.
Um, and Fire Ice generally it's like 34 or 35 hits per se. I'm not gonna do the math on chances of you missing here, but it's like astronomically low. So you probably haven't played as many card games in your entire life equal to like the chance of missing. So uh
Funny little tidbit actually. Our
oh.
mutual friend, our mutual acquaintance, one Nado,
Yeah.
was corresponding with me after the event, and he has already succeeded in missing entirely in this with this deck.
Okay, him missing once means that all of us won't miss. He took it
Yeah,
for us. So
exactly.
that's that's crazy. Okay, so I think I know the general answer to this, but um with this version of the deck, and I'll say this too, usually balancing out the colors of a three element deck for Verstail, um, it can be tough sometimes. And I've done Fire, Ice, Lightning in the past. That's a little different because Celteus can hit your lightning cards. So when I splashed, I usually splashed somewhere between 6 and 10 uh, of the splash color. This deck isn't really a splash. It's you got 14, 17, 18 of the colors. What kind of drawn you to the earth element? Because I feel like the answer is basically just Arden and the backups being like a draw to kind of a thing. In my experience, which I have Earth Verstale cards as well. I don't know if you know this. When I went to Japan for the first time, I bought a full foil Japanese Verstail deck and then extra cards. I have a lot of these cards in foil Japanese, so I'm prepared. But
Mm.
what made you go to Earth? Because for me, my feeling was always the backups are good, but the things that you get off of Verstail are not that good. But in this case, Arden hitting those backups is pretty good because you get two cards out of them. Is that kind of the mindset?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, it's kind of strange actually how often I hit either Vanille or Minfilia or Varden, and when you do that, it does feel like you've gained a few IQ points by doing that. The main thing is, I mean, when you look at the deck list and you sort of talk about it, you understand. Yeah, you understand why that question comes up. I guess the main thing is the Regis, in the sense that it allows you to play. It's another way of playing art. So if you think about it, your two main, I don't want to backup cut. Your two main colors are water and earth in the deck. It's very obvious from the way the backups are.
Mm-hmm.
So having both of those elements, being able to play this fire and this ice card seemed pretty smart. There's also the rare case where Regis is an absolute bomb if you get to like 5 damage quickly and you can turn the game around like that. But yeah, it just kind of formed naturally, and I just went with it and it just worked. It's really, but Cindy is first and foremost a very like it's very important for this archetype. So honestly, I would maybe go as far as to say Cindy is the sole reason Earth is that focus. So yeah, it's Cindy and Regis. It's the FF15 cards there, but there's definitely room to try it in different with different elements. It's just yeah, that ideal opening we're looking for of Cindy, Search Verstail, Edelas into Verstail, setting out your colours very nicely, giving you a fully refreshed hand, was just kind of good enough to run with the deck, and it just ended up working out.
Yeah, I've different mindset, but similar to Cindy. Sid Highwind backup, like the newer one. I feel like a lot of people have noticed that that card's really good, but it doesn't really belong anywhere. Um, and I think Cindy kind of was that as well, but now it belongs somewhere, you know? And it also helps that Cindy can break itself and its other abilities aren't like irrelevant either. So,
Yeah, it's always been a solid card, even without, well, not even without the search too. But yeah, like there's definitely times where in the tournament I was considering the value of the plus 3k because you got these Arden and Vestel, which are these nothing bodies after you put them on the board. You're just trying to like Renoa them or maybe use them for Zodiac fodder. You're not really expecting them to do anything. And then there comes a point in the game where you're looking at the Cindy backup and you're like, actually, these guys might be able to just push damage now that I'm threatening them gaining an extra 3k.
right. Um, Regis, let's talk about Regis. When this card came out, I was like, okay, this is a Ramza, right? But it doesn't have an activated ability. This is the cheap man's Ramza, basically. But in this case, you know, this is your Arden enabler or like another one or Verstail, right? How many times did you res Arden with this?
More often than Verstail,
Okay.
because a lot of the time Verstail would come out with natural ICP. So, and there were occasions where the sort of the riskiest part of the deck is where you already have Verstail on board, and you decide to go Regis into Arden, knowing full well there's a chance the Arden flips either another Regis or Verstail. But yeah, it usually just gets Arden because the obviously the hardest card in the deck to play otherwise. And a lot of the time, if you're opening with Verstail Edelas, you're using your first Edelas to get Verstail, to get your hand kind of in order. And unless you're going to break the Edelas to play another one, you normally have to either find the second Arden, maybe through using Cindy, or you just have to play it off Regis.
Okay. Something else I wanted to touch on. I know the answer to this, but can you tell everyone how good Ultimecia is?
Yeah, I mean, so Ultimecia, the people that asked me about it and asked me at the event, some people think it's a Verstael deck, some people think it's an Arden deck. Really, the answer is it's an Ultimecia deck. Uh, it's hard to really put it on one card because the way the deck works is that you take away too many of these cards, like you just sort of wipe them from existence, and the deck just can't form because there's a surprisingly low number of high cost cards in the game that are good with something like Arden or getting them through Verstael, things like that. Ultimately, she kind of gives a payoff to every single one. So you see a lot of the cards in this deck are like fluff. You're never going to actually cast Luna Freya from your hand. You really don't want to cast Theodore. Really, it's Lev 9 that's going to most likely high drop that's actually coming out of your hand that's trying to. Well, that's not Regis, basically. So Ultimecia is giving you kind of a reason for dumping all these cards in your break zone, filtering with Verstael. But it's also, when you just do the simple math, is Ultimecia is a 5 CP card. You Dole Freeze, say 5 backups if the game goes on like that, and then you get a discard. Realistically, it's like a -2 CP forward, and that's exactly the kind of busted thing you're looking for the deck to be doing. And ultimately, she does it so naturally. You don't really have to try so hard when your deck is just so geared around it anyway. And yeah, a lot of the time, how the deck will work is that you'll try and chip in a bit of early damage with maybe that first Verstael you play, or the Regis, or even the Arden. Literally, like 2 damage can be enough, and then you're gonna get like, well, you can honestly have those 2 forwards. The following turn, play Ultimecia, Dole Freeze their board, swing a couple of times again, and then if they can't do anything, you have at least 3 attackers next turn to finish them off. And a lot of people just don't consider how, with a deck with only 1 haste forward that has never actually declared an attack, can just kill you so quickly over 2 turns.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that next actually, so I'm glad you brought up haste. Well, actually, before I get to that, the last time, just for reference, the last time I played Verstail in general was 2 years ago at the Winter Cup, and it was like right after Japan and everything. Um, and yeah, it was again Fire Ice, all that stuff. I actually played like a 2 backup version. I played Celeste for Lock and then Lock for Cosmos, and I had General Rogue Jadine in the deck, so it was a bit aggressive. And yeah, obviously Ultimecia, I already knew it was gonna be a great card, but the fact of it being like, okay, you take a whole turn off, and I'm gonna get 2 attacks in. Well, if for some reason that isn't good enough, then the Renoa on the Ultimecia should be, because that's like 3 turns of attacks. And I felt like, I guess we can combine this with haste. I felt like the weakness of Verstail has always been like EX bursts. Um, and I've also felt like in the past when I've played Verstail decks that did not have haste, they've been a little bit lackluster. Um, but I think Ultimecia kind of makes up for that, because it makes your opponent take a turn off essentially, and that's what you get in replacement for not having haste. Um, did you have any problems besides like without having haste? Like Theodore's there, of course, but was that ever an issue for you?
It's funny you mentioned that because I think I maybe only played Theodore twice throughout the whole tournament because it just came in off Arden a couple of times, and every single time they went to he had haste, and every single time I forgot he had haste. So it tells you what I know about the game. But yeah, um, yeah, haste. I mean, like you say, the sort of this time compression effect of Ultimecia, good law with that effect. It feels like you're getting haste because it feels like you're getting an extra turn. But otherwise, yeah, I mean, the best example is the finals match in the Materia Cup, which was on the stream. Uh, Naturally, that I get to this point where I'm kind of just dead. I've been behind the whole time, and I have an Ultimecia that got Amaterasu, and I finally find a way to get the Renoa for it. And I go from being completely dead to just having a shot. And if I just had one more attacker on that turn or the following turn, I would have won the game. And it is kind of, yeah, it's definitely a frustrating thing if sometimes you are just always playing behind. against a deck like Knights that you can't chip in that early damage, so you can't kill them over 2 turns. But for the most part, yeah, that was the only time I felt like, man, I wish I just had like a Firion I could cast or something like that. But that's the thing as well. When you look at most of the haste forwards available, especially within these 3 colors, you're like, yeah, Theodore and Zodiac are looking pretty hot for those options.
I noticed in your article you mentioned basically every single card, and the one that stands out to me about not being so great is Griever. Um, are there any other cards you would consider like removing from the deck? I know there's a lot of potential for adding different cards, and I know a lot of the deck. It's basically an Arden deck, right? That's why there's so many singletons. But would you ever consider um, removing any other cards on this deck? And then also, would you consider going to three of any other cards in this deck? Because me personally, I'm a big fan of three Renoa. But again, with the Arden logic, right, it can be tough.
Yeah, so the main things that you want to avoid playing 3 of, which is I guess ironic because the ones I'm about to say are at 3. But yeah, the cards you don't want as 3 really are the ones that are expected to be on the board at the same time you're actually using Arden's ability. Now, unfortunately, when it comes to Verstael and Regis, you can't really help this because you kind of just need these cards to get to popping up with Arden in the first place. But Renoa is the kind of unfortunate one there that sometimes you will just play it before you've played a copy of Arden, and that just gives you an extra risk if there's 2 more in the deck as opposed to 1. Uh, it can definitely be, well, yeah, it's very frustrating when you miss with a card like that. As for the cards that can be cut apart from Griever, well, the beauty of it is that kind of as long as you keep the color palette similar, you can kind of pick and choose whatever you want. So I mentioned in the article this deck went from like version 1 to version 6 uh, very quickly over the space of basically a week. And that wasn't actually an over exaggeration. The first draft of this list had the same premise, but very different card choices. So initially, Heretical Knight, Garland, Sephiroth, Theodore, Shantoto weren't in there, and they were put in sort of as I kind of wanted Theodore and Sephiroth anyway. Sorry, one second. I'm just going to pause it. Can you hear the background noise while I'm talking?
Nope.
Cool, that's fine. So I wanted Theodore and Sephiroth anyway, but it's kind of a limit testing thing that you kind of try to see what your opponent can do without you ripping their hand apart. So you want to just do the Arden hits that kind of just like give you value or hit their board but not their hand, so you can always see what they do afterwards. And then you put, I wanted to put in cards like Sephiroth and Theodore because in a tournament I don't care about my opponent getting to do their thing, obviously. And then as for cards that can go higher. Well, actually, sorry, I keep going on that. You could cut the Genesis. You could cut the you could cut the Azura. Like all these cards aren't they don't directly lead to you winning the game. I think, or at least not in a wide enough range of matchups. The cards that could therefore go higher just because they are generically useful. I did want to play 2 Shadow Lord just because of the convenience of being a fire ice, not fire ice, a water ice multi element. I even considered extra Shadow Lords because I was thinking about playing Star Sibyl, and it is a 11 target. That's also a an option for Star Sibyl, but ultimately chose against it.
Mm-hmm.
Une could go to 3, similar reason. Multi element's very useful, and it's nice to be able to target backups. And Lev 9 is probably the one card for sure. Actually probably the card I put to 3 the most because the way Arden works, for those that don't know, is that if you do not have the character with that name on the board, when you flip it, if you flip 2 at the same time, they both enter the field. So you get any entry abilities, but they both immediately go to the break zone. So the benefit is that if you Arden and hit 2 Levs, even if you're bouncing 2 backups, at least you're kind of putting them behind as well. Obviously, you don't want to lose two forwards, especially two 9Ks with potentially extra threat later on. But that was kind of the idea as well. That yeah, if you hit two Levs, even if you hit two Sephiroths or two Theodores and they have four cards in hand, great. You know, at least you're kind of both playing on a similar field at that point. So I'm not too fussed about going to three and stuff like that. But otherwise, yeah, on that note, yeah, nothing else really keen to put to three because a lot of the cards do similar things. Like Luna Freya is basically the same as hitting Larsa or hitting Cindy as backups, and most of the time you'd want the backup rather than the forward. But like I said, there's actually only so many 5 drops and higher that you want in a deck like this within these kind of three core colors that you do kind of take what you've got, and what you've got is great, but it's one of those decks I'm always happy to see what new sets are going to bring in terms of options.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the ruling thing, putting in play two of the same name. That thing is as old as the dual Regis, the Lightning Earth Regis. That's how the whole Regis Renoa loop started in the first place. So yeah, you're able to put in play two of the same thing as long as you don't have it in play already. So like putting in play two Larsas. Oh, you're drawing four. Actually, you're drawing more than four because they're both
Yeah,
breaking.
yeah,
You're drawing six. That's kind of awesome. I want to do that now. um, or like in your case, unfortunately on stream, you hit two Idoluses, but you had Arden and Verstael in play already, and I think you had no targets left. So that was kind of a flop. However, you still won that game.
yeah. Yeah,
So
we
that
did.
kind of proves the strength of the deck right there. Um, are there any other summons you consider? Do you, because in my mindset, so look, I think we all know, all my friends know I'm pretty greedy when it comes to deck building, but I always like test the limits. And what you just told me with the element stuff and the cards, like removing them, my mindset is drop the cards you just mentioned and put more summons in. And yes, that means more misses with Verstail. But remember, when I was playing Fire Ice, 35 ish was my number, and we're not cutting like 10 cards here. So, uh, are there any other summons that you'd consider? And then also, um, you mentioned the colors staying the same distribution. Um, is it truly like a three element deck? Is it one of those things of you can't really give up equity in one of the elements. You have to have all three. I noticed like, and when I played Fire Ice, ice was the dominant color, and if I went over like 20, I think 21 is the highest fire count I had, but that was still too much. And I always aim for like 18 or 19. But there was a time where I'm like, okay, there's too many fire cards, and now I can't like Versatile Renoa or just cast any of my important cards because my important cards were ice. Is there an element that you like prefer more than others? Obviously, ice for Versatile, but like there's water for Idolas, right? I almost feel like earth is the color that is the least important, but you still need it. That kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, so water's the most important for casting cards, especially in the early game. It's yeah, like there were quite a lot of games where I would even keep this hand, where if I opened say Verstail and Thordan, and I was going second, I would just keep it because the value you gain back from going Thordan, Edalus Verstail is good enough that you don't mind playing a 6 CP Thordan as much as that kind of it normally would suck. Uh, and therefore, yeah, you need that extra water CP. And there are just a lot of games where I just was like, I looked at the hand and I'm like, it's got Verstale, it's got Thordan, but it's only got one water source. And therefore, the chance of me drawing a water source in my top two, aside from the fact it's not guaranteed, it's not even super likely. So, water is the most important for the early game. Um, Earth is, Earth is definitely, long story short, the one you could cut, shave a bit off. Ice again, I didn't want to cut because you have to discard ice cards, and you only have one actual ice backup. So every time you want to play an ice card, you're more often than not discarding another one from your hand. It's especially true with the early Verstael, in that sometimes your Cindy will get double Verstael just so you can guarantee the ICP if you want to play it on the following turn. You can also just circumvent this by playing 3 copies of Tyro. Again, Tyro, a third Tyro just makes it a bit awkward with Arden because you never want to actually get rid of Tyro with Arden because it's so useful for the color fixing, and you also don't really care to flip it with Arden because it only gives you +1 card. But you could still mess about with that. I did for a while, and it was fine. But yeah, look, short answer to your question: Earth is the easiest color I think to shave.
What about summons?
Other summons I play? That's a good question. So Miss Dragon. So okay, I started off at 0 in the first like 4 versions of the deck because, well, can't really give you a good. Yeah, well, actually, no, I can give you the good reason. It's the same thing with limit testing. You just don't. I don't care about Miss Dragon and getting the Amat. I want to see how well I can play through the Amat. I don't want to cancel the autos because I want to see what I can play through without having to cancel it with Lev, so on and so forth. So I maybe limit tested too much and didn't put these cards in quickly enough in the short time I had. But Miss Dragon, I realized, was just so multi-purpose that basically I could play 3 of both of these summons quite happily. And as far as other summons I could play, um, it's kind of whatever. There's nothing you can really use from the new lineup because it requires, like, the new Titan requires you to dole 2 Earth forwards. And a lot of the time you won't have 2 Earth forwards, stuff like that, even though that's quite a good card normally. There's obviously Q-Sith you can play, gives you another
Hmm.
EX burst.
I was going to
But
bring it
how many
up.
times are actually going to cast Q-Sith? Uh, about the same amount of times probably as I'm going to want to cast Noctis, which is not that often. I think Noctis was the least used limit break throughout the entire event. Um, he is, of course, 6 CP, but yeah, Kusith is actually not that far off when you think about it. And then other summons wise, yeah, I mean, there aren't that many other water summons that work that well outside of mono water. You can play like Lev 6 if you just want it for the EX burst, but uh, I don't particularly, don't really care for that part. And Earth summons wise, there's nothing that really springs to mind that's like, yeah, I could really do something in this deck. But I'd be open to trying new ones. And as you say, the Verstail numbers don't need to be that high in the first place, so you can kind of mess about with what you like. And Arden skips summons as well, so yeah, you don't have to worry about it as far as Arden's concerned.
Yeah, I brought up summons mainly because of Une, right? We all know how good Une is, and getting the discount on it obviously would be really really nice. So that's why I brought that up. Like I could even see myself. Like I'll just be honest right now. I haven't played any games of this deck yet, but just upping the Mist Dragon and Love counts, right? Like just starting there and seeing how it goes. Just so we'd have cheaper Une more consistently.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to the fact that I had this dream that there was going to be like a game or two where I'd draw Une quite late, and I would have 2 of the 3 summons in my break zone to make cost 4. That never happened, funnily enough. But yeah, I can definitely see. Like, there was just a lot of times where I was like, if this Une cost 4, it would be a no-brainer. But because it costs 6, if they answer it, it's a little bit too much in this moment to invest in just bouncing a backup, which half the time has an ETB. So if you wanted to make it more Uno focused, play through Uno, play 6 summons at least, then yeah, absolutely, I could see going down that route.
And the last thing I have on top of my head here, the one thing. So just going down a little bit of memory lane and just my background in general. I'm not an aggressive player, but I kind of went down the whole aggro route because I felt like for a while in NA there weren't very many successful like aggro players, and then back in the day we had Oki and he was one of the best control players. Now we have Verdian, who's a really good control player, and they weren't really being contested with aggression. So I was trying to basically like break through that kind of situation. And that's kind of where I landed with Verstail. And there's some other aggro decks too that I've played, but like basically my take on aggro has always been, lay out your cards, but always have a backup plan. And the backup plan is actually the plan that matters. That's the one that you win with. Uh, I guess you can, think about like knights, right? Where it's like, oh, you can Rams a Corolla, but make sure you have a backup Corolla or a backup Ramza or whatever, or just Corolla and then have the Ramza in your hand. You always got to have a plan B, and the plan B is what wins you the game. And with Verstail, my plan B was Celteus, and this deck doesn't have that obviously because there's no fire. Um, did you ever feel like you got blown out in some way and you didn't have a comeback? Is Arden the comeback card and like the main card? Is Arden carrying the like all the weight? Like we already talked about Ultimecia, but like you get what I'm saying? It's one of those things of like what is if I play my hand and I get board wiped, where do I go from there?
Yeah, I mean, well, the simple answer to that last question is that I just wouldn't play my hand out in pretty much all the times where a board wipe was available. Thankfully, the only kind of board wipes weirdly in the meta right now are like still Shentoto, backup or LB, and like Cyan in the odd kind of Warrior of Light deck, I find. Otherwise, a lot of it is just good kind of single target removal. Obviously, like Rams or Refia, those kind of things. A lot of it's attached to forwards these days because that's where the
Right.
value is. But yeah, as far as yeah, Arden is very much this kind of package. Sometimes you just kind of just play them out and see what happens. Sometimes you're like, yeah, if I get this through, it's gonna. Uh, well, yeah, it's not my backup plan, but sometimes you're like, I'm doing my Verstail thing, I'm getting my value, but they're also getting their value doing their thing, so I need to, yeah, hit a kind of jackpot shot. So Arden does come up in that way. But yeah, you're right. I mean, I would love to fit Celtius in this deck. Unfortunately, that he also then requires the entire rest of the deck morph to have enough other five and lowers rather than all these kind of seven pluses that are
Yeah.
in the deck.
There's not very many fives in general. Like if you, assuming you could cast the Salteas here, like there's not very many hits.
Yeah, yeah, it's like you'd have to go back to like playing Faisalists and stuff like that, which was another card I actually considered, and I definitely don't think it's in the realm of Celtius, but it would have been nice to have another forward that's kind of a three of that is maybe doesn't carry the game by itself like Arden sometimes does, but definitely sort of buys you time, is an annoyance because you are quite reliant on these things resolving. And yet that I was never really having a problem too much with Amaterasu, but the problem is always Amaterasu at the perfect moment. Like there are just sometimes you need an Arden to go through, and either they just happen to have it, or they've realized you need the Arden to go through at a certain point, and they've just played it well until that point that you're forced to do it, and yeah, you don't have enough cards to Miss Dragon, or you don't have the Miss Dragon, or something like that. But yeah, there is no backup plan. I guess the one backup plan is Zodiac, in the sense that sometimes you'll get it off first ale, and you think I don't really need to do anything now. I just need to play this card at a time where I maximize its chances of living a whole turn. Because generally, I found that as long as Zodiac lived longer than the first turn you get its effect off, you win the game because the value is so high when you're sacking off first Dales and Ardens for it. You're basically paying no cost. Or Leo. Leo is actually one of the biggest things you get rid of. But yeah, you basically pay no cost for Zodiac the way the game is now. So eating two forwards and two cards in hand and removing them from play uh, was a big deal. But you can't play more copies of Zodiac, I found. So it's a bit different to Celtair, where you can't rely on it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Zodiac because I thought of something as well. One of the weaknesses, I mean, obviously Matarasu's up there, but like with the Fire Ice version was you play your hand, you still have five cards in your hand, that's fine. But like you play your hand and you don't want to commit more to the board, but you also, you've already Verstilled, you've already Renoed, you've already Celteist, and you're just like chump attacking or party attacking, and they never block. And when I didn't have the Fire Ice Laswell, it would work if I had that, right? I could just like party with all three of them and kill something, and they probably would still take a damage. But like, um, I I found myself like taking a turn off because I had my good cards in play already, and they didn't do enough, and they wouldn't block them, so I couldn't get rid of them. Um, Zodiark kind of does that for you. You know, did you ever find yourself like removing a Verstail and then playing another one? Um, and if that's the case, I was curious. Would you ever consider a graph in your LB like next time?
That's an interesting one I hadn't really thought about. No, well, sorry, no. I mean, would I consider graph? Probably not. So I don't want to sacrifice. Well, no, the better answer is I definitely didn't get into a position at all where I was like, I can't do anything unless I remove one of the forwards off my board. I think just the pace of the game and the fact that you just always kind of have something else to do with your CP anyway. It's like, yeah, if you got Arden, Verstael, and Renault on the board, then by that point, if they're just still there, you're probably then gonna have Ultimecia or something to do, or even Lev 9 sometimes to just pave the way for them to go through. I didn't really have a problem with that. So Graph, not really, but yeah, Zodiac definitely. Every time you have those kind of boards, you think, "What's the forward I'm likely to replay next?" Even if you don't already have it in your hand. So yeah, sometimes I wouldn't remove the Leo. Like I would have Leo out for some reason, or because I'd played it earlier, and I'd be like, actually, it's better off just getting rid of Verstael here because I'd rather play another Verstael than
Mm-hmm.
another Leo.
Okay. What was your toughest matchup this weekend? And are there any specific cards that you don't want to sit across from? Over here, Verdian won with Chaos Arc. I have a feeling that's a terrible matchup for this deck. Um, I don't know how popular it's going to be, but it's obviously going to go up in popularity now. Is there anything like that or Axstar or anything that you are worried about?
Yes, I wasn't worried about Chaos Arc, and maybe I would be now if this event was like if the Germany event was like this weekend instead, and everyone had that kind of chalk information from Portland. Because although I thought the deck was still fine, I didn't necessarily expect very few people play it, even when it does well. But a lot of the time, yeah, very few people in the room are playing it, and then it always seems to like win or uh, place highly in the top cut. So yeah, that definitely isn't a favourable matchup just on the way the deck works. Like Arden is even further reducing chaos unnecessarily as well. So yeah, I haven't played any games versus that deck, but I don't particularly want to. Axstar was definitely something I was thinking about uh, because I've encountered that problem obviously with playing Una in the past, where most of your deck is twos and fours. So you just kind of sometimes just would randomly lose a game because you can't stop Axstar's dull freeze. This one, you kind of have your own kind of your own thing you can do back. Like you can save your Ultimecia for when they Axstar, and then just dull freeze their board, and then you'll be back up next turn, and you'll be fine because yeah, while you even might not be able to kill the Axstar, a lot of the time your board is just filled with 9Ks, so they can attack, sure, and kill something, but then you can block the Axstar and then kind of stave the damage off. And then the other thing I didn't want to play against. Well, I didn't. So Wall 7 was the first thing in my head. I was like, would rather avoid this because Cyan is very good against the deck as a board clear. Um, can't really stop it without Leviathan, and also just the way the kind of Wall 7s are working now with bots and having lots of crystals. It's pretty easy for them to get to the 5 crystals for Cyan without even having to pay that much for his auto. So sometimes Lev doesn't even help that much. And then that deck has Gilgamesh, so you'll both play a kind of value engine board development deck, but they have a couple of extra kind of broken things that are hard to interact with. And then yeah, Knights, I was like, that's basically the same thing. They have access to Amat, they have Corilla, which is just broken. Forget Ramza. Corilla just play 2 guys is about as good as you're doing, and you probably need most case you need an extra turn setup. So yeah, putting it that way, it sounds like there's a lot of actually terrible matchups that are quite common or going to be quite common in the meta. But they're not terrible. They're just stuff I'd like rather not have to deal with
Yeah,
if I could. Um,
I was gonna mention warriors too, because like they have Vaxstar, but also if if they know what they're playing against, if they go Tyvis Mog like on turn one, that can be kind of annoying with this deck as well.
yeah, that did actually happen in my top 16 round on game two. He discarded three backups to play Tyvas into Mog, and I was like, on one hand, I was like, I don't think that's correct. Um, but then on the other hand, it is annoying if you're planning to go like Cindy turn one. There aren't actually that many. It seems like the kind of deck that needs to search a lot, but there's actually quite not that many cards that search. So Mog Tyvas is not really as much of an issue as it is for other things, like versus Dark Knight Cecil, for example. Um, yeah, I don't know. It's like it's there's stuff it's like you said, there's stuff I'd rather not sit across from, but I also thought this was one of those decks that maybe just surprise factor being on my side. I kind of thought this could handle anything, but yeah, Chaos Art might be one of those ones where it's like, that's just so hard to navigate if you don't get like a really broken Arden early or something like that.
One last question, and then we'll move on. With Sid Waff, like you said, Sid Waff was worth it. Um, is there any consideration for like Lena?
So the idea was that I don't care about drawing cards if they're hitting EX bursts. I'd rather they don't get the card than I do. You don't have a problem with keeping hand size a lot of the time. The deck does generate a lot of value. It is very easy to play your cards. Um, yeah, I've never been like, man, I could really do with an extra card now. Every time they hit a burst, I'm like, I really wish they didn't have the extra card. And it was particularly for the Warrior of Light matchup. Because I already thought the matchup was okay with all the kind of tech I'd added in. But I was like, well, like you said a lot earlier, uh, there's a problem of Verstael just attacking and EX bursts and things like that. And against war players, I do want to chip in. I want that early Verstael and Arden to just whack them a bit so I can put them in kill ratio. I want to do that versus every matchup. So I want to have the freedom to do that. And it was a kind of distinct thing where in my Swiss round against Warrior of Light, I had a game with Sid Waff where he not only was there against three EX bursts, but he was also there against the Luna Freya trigger, and he triggers when they trigger an EX burst off Luna Freya as well, just
Right.
like Leonard does. So that kind of single-handedly won that game. That was the same game that the double Edlas happened off the Arden, and that was partly why I still won, I believe. And then in top four against Warrior Lights again, different opponent this time, but very similar deck, 27 bursts. I didn't get Sid Waff in any of the games, although I dug quite a lot to try and kind of find it. I didn't get it, and in I think game two and three, he hit quite a few early bursts, and I was just like, yeah, man, he hits a Tyro, it sucked, and he hit Tyro first damage. It's like, you take that deep breath, and you're like, I can still beat this, but it's just infinitely harder without Sid Waff to even the playing field. So yeah, the matchup's still winnable, but I would rather not leave home without Sid Waff after that experience for sure.
All right. Anything you want to add before we go on to the next topic?
Um, yeah, I mean the only thing to really say is that yeah, like we've talked about, a lot of the cards can be shaved, a lot of things can be messed around with. The deck is just this kind of strange mutant amalgam of heavy hitters.
Bro, this
Um,
is a pile, bro. I'm just gonna say it.
yeah, it's a pile of cards,
Pile
and
Kyle right here, bro.
yeah, that's the beauty of it. That's why people
Yeah,
were so fascinated. In Germany, I'm sure are still fascinated afterwards. Like, how does it work? But it just does. Just trust me, bro. That kind of thing. But yeah, the other thing was just as the main deck is pretty flexible. The limit break deck is as well. But I did use every single limit break card at least once to good effect. But I think there's literally like you could put a whole different 8 limit break cards in there and justify each of them the same time. Maybe not Leo. Leo is very important, but but
yeah.
yeah, you could play like the new Heretical Knight Garland. You can play Victora. You can play Tidus. There were instances of the deck where I had Tidus
Oh
in, and I
wow.
actually would consider trying Tidus again because again there are these some games where either you don't resolve an Arden for some reason, or they just go on for ages, and a Tidus would seal the deal. So there's so many things I would try and limit break. Don't be afraid to mess about with anything. Although I would say the best cards were Surges, Kuja, and the two Leos. Everything else is definitely flexible.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I could fit Victoria in, but I don't know what I would take out. So yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about was, so obviously we had like a new ban list, restricted list. Um, Rosa, Cecil getting banned, and Yuna going to one. Um, do you have any opinions on that? Is there anything that you wanted to chime in towards that?
So the local group chat already is well aware that I didn't actually really care what happened to Una because I can't spite the girl. She got me a world spot, so I don't really
Right.
I got nothing against her personally. But even then, I was like, I just kind of was thinking at the time. My logic, I don't know if my logic's changed since, but my logic for nothing being hit is if nothing had been hit was like they sure are pushing towards. They've made a lot of broken light and dark cards. Basically, the
Mm-hmm.
biggest flaw in the game has been the light and dark cards, and it's hard to blame anyone for that because the highest ceiling, the most scope you have to figure out is light and dark cards. So Stern, Mastery,
Yep.
Chaos, and now Una. And you look at all of those, and you look at what they can do when geared specifically for a deck themselves, and what they can just do kind of chucked in somewhere. And it's like, yeah, that's pretty powerful. So I was wondering, are they just kind of happy for it to be like this? And Yuna's going to be the new light dark boogeyman, boogie woman, and you're just going to have to adapt. And decks like this, exactly like this with the Verstael thing, you just can't play anymore. It's like we don't care about you playing decks that use a million auto abilities and have kind of a lot of heavy CP cost in the first turn because we've made this unicard. Evidently, they they don't want the game heading down that direction. And having now played the format without it, played this event, yeah, it's way more fun. But at the same time, we have also no, I'm not. It's weird. This is one of those ones that I can go on and on about for ages, but it hasn't digressed to Warriors of Light, even though that was very popular in Germany, I believe, very popular in Portland. But it's people have digressed, right? So the field is still very wide open, but people go back to their comfort blanket after these bans because they're kind of a lot of people waiting for someone else to figure it out, or they just know it's still going to be a very strong deck. But I don't know. Just today, I was looking at some deck lists, and I was getting inspiration for new ideas. During Germany, had the same thing. I'm like, there's so many decks that don't exist yet that will, if someone builds it and takes a success before the European and North American Championship, uh, and it's exciting to see that happen if it does. But at the same time, there's still going to be loads of people playing four color Wallrifia stuff and knights and all this kind of stuff. But man, this format is so diverse now with the restrictions and with how good Gunslinger in the Abyss is as an opus that I'm personally just very excited to see things now to the point that I would agree with those restrictions because they've made me excited to deck build again.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like Cecil Rosa, yeah, I get it. It's actually kind of funny. Literally, like the day they made the announcement, I got some pings saying, "Yo, if KP won Worlds, both of his decks would have ban cards in them."
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy, right? But and then I got some other pings from some toxic individuals that said, "Imagine not winning with banned cards in your deck," you know. So yeah, that was something. Anyways, but yeah, I'm with you. like I tried my hardest over here with Yuna. Uh, Played it. I think it was at every turn. It was either every tournament or one I didn't. I don't remember. Um, and there are not very many people over here that played Yuna. Like every tournament, like the Materia Cups, it was like five people or less. And it's kind of going back to what you said, people playing what they like. I almost feel like NA's kind of turn into that regardless. And the meta is not really a meta. It's what's the range of the person, what two or three decks are they going to play? Whereas like, somebody like me or Lopez or Prime or gosh, who else? Basically what I'm saying is I think there's not very many people who would play any deck. But like, those three people I just mentioned, like we will play any deck. But a lot of people here now are like, oh, Verdion's gonna play a control deck. Uh, Mike Powell's gonna play Warrior Light most likely. He'll play some other decks too, but he leans towards Warrior Light. You can just put people on specifics over here now. They're kind of like specialists in that case. So, not to say that there's not brewers or anything like that. Like people are still trying, but if it doesn't work out, I feel like people do go back to old reliable, which is not a bad thing. It's just there's not many like Swiss Army knife situations. I feel like here, I don't know how many crazy deck builders there are at the tournaments. Like you're one of them. I feel like you'll play anything if it works, if it's good. Um, but yeah, with Yuna gone, that definitely like paves the road for deck building. And I kind of felt like with Yuna gone, we kind of gained an extra turn in the game. I felt like turn one or winning the die roll mattered tremendously, and it still matters, but you get like an extra turn of play now, and that extra turn matters for every single deck. So
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I think maybe honestly the only thing that maybe disappointed me about the harshness of the restrictions on top, because I thought personally they were going to just put Unit to one at the at the start of this set, and that was going to be it. And then if it continued to be a problem, then they would start hitting cards like maybe Cecil. Uh, and I'm not saying that would have been right or that would have been wrong. We won't know. But yeah, it's very strange for them to hit something that hard after one set of it being out. Because even Chaos took two. I thought that was it. I thought they do one set to kind of check it, and they do another set to make sure that the cards they brought out don't just neuter it anyway or keep it in check. Um, but I don't know. Part of me is sad because I think Huna was such a good card that you could play it almost anywhere. Or you could morph a deck around it. That we'd only seen about half of what Una could do before they were like, actually, no, half of what you could do is better than what most of anything else can do at kind of full capacity. Uh,
yeah, we
that's kind of
saw it.
where I've been. So go on.
We saw it in like Knights. We saw it in the Vikings decks, of course, like the multiple versions of that. We saw it in FF4, FF12. Is there anything else? Like we saw it in a bunch of decks. Magissa
Yeah,
Hunter was playing it for a while. Yeah,
Yeah, and Yuna had the same kind of effect on me that Wall 7 had. And I looked at the card and I was like, I'm pretty sure you can play any element with this, and therefore you can probably play any element combination with this. And yeah, some are going to be better than others, but everywhere is going to have a little kind of niche thing it does better than anything else. And that was where I was at with Yuna. I kept building new things even after the London Materia Cup, and literally I was testing with one of my buddies the night before got banned, and he was like, "No, I really want to test against this. I want to figure it out." And he's like, "Man, Cecil is so broken, and the Cecil is what's doing me in." And I was like, "Yeah, it is way too good." And then literally I go home that night and I open up the group chat, and oh, all these cards are gone, and is everything solved? But then I'm like, but Warrior of Light is still here, 4-color wall, and that's the thing. So many people were complaining about that card before, and I still think any complaints about it are kind of justified. But they haven't touched that card. for they haven't touched that card yet. I don't know what everyone's opinions are on that card, but I've always thought that card is doing a little bit too much as well. So it's just that kind of thing. Yeah, you hit the Uno and the Cecil and all that, but yeah, like these old decks are going to come out of the woodwork again, and people are going to find something new to complain about,
Yeah, I feel
or something old to complain about.
for me, I feel like four color wall. The only problem with it is it's four colors. Um, Once it's in play, I kind of don't mind. It's just a powerful forward. We have plenty of powerful forwards, but the fact that he can discard for any element is kind of a little too much for me. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that card either. It can be, Ferris or Refia or whatever. There's some other cards you could definitely make a case in point for as well. Um, but yeah, I was kind of surprised too with like more than just Yuna, but it kind of also makes sense, and it's kind of sad for Rosa. But it also still kind of makes sense, right? Because you could still do Rosa Cecil into a different Cecil. So, but is that like I feel like that's okay. I don't know if that's necessarily like toxic gameplay. So
Yeah, I mean, well, why the biggest sad thing about Rosa is that yeah, they designed Category 4 to be one of those FF games that is all the characters and different elements. And they finally brought a card that's supposed to kind of bring that together and bridge the gap between Rydia, Palom, Porum, and it just kind of got caught in that ability got caught in the crossfire to the point that I kind of hope they just design another card without Rosa's like drawing a million cards that allows you to actually do that kind of stuff
yeah,
with FF4 again because that was a bit
give us a
that was a
two
bit
CP
lame.
backup, two CP backup that
Yeah,
does the same thing. That'd be sweet. Well, not the draw card part, of course, but
yeah.
Um, I also wonder if so. This can kind of go towards our last topic here, but I I feel like if they did nothing to the list, to like the ban list, we at least for our nationals, we probably would have saw everybody with one of their decks being Yuna, um, or they would play two decks that could possibly beat Yuna, and they've announced the format, which is similar to Worlds last year. 4 rounds with deck A, 4 rounds with deck B, and then you got to in day two. The top cut is the normal two deck format, and I know that like there was a lot of controversy when they announced the format, and I don't know if you guys played two deck format over there or not, but that used to be kind of our norm for nationals, where you bring both your two decks. They can't share cards, but you have to win with both of them. It's a best of three, where you have to win with both of them, and everybody loves it over here. Well, I say everybody, but the majority of people do. Some people don't, and they kind of went a different direction with it, and I think it's technically worse, but it's nothing to like cry over. World format wasn't my favorite, and it's still not my favorite. I got second, and it's still not my favorite, but it's not bad. Like I think it is. I'm neutral with it, and there's still skill involved. Deck selection definitely still matters. Knowing what you can and can't do. It's like a lot of limit testing, and that's kind of what proves skill, right? So, um, tell me a little bit about like what your previous like nationals, Euros, uh, formats used to be, and then do you think that if you like the ban list didn't change, do you think that everybody would bring a Unideck?
Yeah, so on the two deck format things, I think I've played now. I think there's only been two events, no, three events. So three events I think where we've played two deck, and it's been
And you
best of one Swiss. Um,
so you're
so the first,
when you say two deck, what your day one was best of ones? It wasn't win with both decks, best of three.
the three I'm talking about were best of one Swiss. So that was the European Championships up until this year have been best of three. But the first one I played that was best of one was the Japan Cup in Nagoya way back in like 2019. And then the other two have been Worlds in 2023 and Worlds in 2024. I think they were both bring two decks but play them throughout Swiss. And I was like, whatever. I just kind of dealt with it, kind of thing. Uh, do prefer best of three with two decks. I kind of think the whole point of a two deck format is to solve all the problems that everyone has, or not everyone has, that a lot of people have with the game. In that it feels like it should be a best of three game, but like a lot of modern card games, we play best of one through the Swiss rounds, and two deck justifies best of three a bit more, I think. And when you're trying to figure out the best players, like at the European Championships and the World Championship, feels more sensible to play best of threes and also have multiple decks and multiple strategies tested and all these kind of things. It just opens up this whole world, right?
You play best of three this weekend. Actually, that's something different too. Our Materia Cups Swiss are not best of three, but yours was.
Yeah, so we were allowed. Well, yeah, the European events. I mean, I don't know if the Americans could play. North American events could be played differently if they wanted to, but we are given that kind of flexibility to choose the format as we like, as long as it's not changing it to like Pauper or whatever. So we had the French Materia Cup at the first event of the season. I believe was best of three Swiss, and then this one in Germany was also best of three. Now, when I heard it was best of three, I was like, okay, cool. But at the same time, I was like, I actually don't care for playing best of three Swiss with one deck anymore. And although you can't necessarily control the weather, I will let anyone who doesn't know Germany was very hot this past weekend, and the store, while it had kind of a big warehouse basically, well, while it had some air conditioning, wasn't quite enough to deal with the heat. So by doing 6 rounds best of three instead of six best of one, we did add an extra like at least 3 hours onto the tournament, and that took its toll. During the last round, I was getting very hazy and forgetful. I think it was affecting a lot of people as well. So purely from that kind of stamina point of view, I can understand why events are best of one Swiss. And Materia Cups, I think, are fine as best of one Swiss. But when it comes to the European Championship, North American Championship, all these kind of things, these one step before Worlds kind of events, even though Materia Cups are kind of like that now again, I think it is important to have that kind of, I don't know, the integrity of best of three all the way through. And I get it. Some people could argue that once you get to top cut and it's best of three anyway, it doesn't really matter because you should have already gotten the majority of the best players in the room to that point. But I kind of just like it clean, kind of all the way through the same thing when it comes to two deck format. But yeah, for some reason, when it comes to one deck format, I would much rather just get the Swiss rounds over and done with and get onto the best of three in top cut.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. I'm not hmm, I'm not completely sure. Like so for us in North America, I feel like there's a chance that the reason it's not um like best two out of three is time constraints. Um, but I don't know for sure if that's the case. And then I'm also like agreeing. Well, even if that's the case, I feel like our format shouldn't impact other countries. I think maybe it's one of those things where like, okay, everybody's uh, biggest term of the year should be a different way to qualify. Like is um, is Australia going to be the same format? I actually don't know. I haven't looked. Like stuff like that. But like Australia is notorious for having like a smaller player count, right? Like, is our format going to not be good for a 50-person tournament? I think it's 50. I don't know. It's a random number. Um, I think 8 rounds for 50 people. I mean, it worked at Worlds, I guess, but like, is that really what we want to be doing? Like, I'm not sure. And then what I'm also wondering is, so you mentioned when we're trying to go for worlds, best of three is basically, preferred because it's like, in my opinion, it's like the best player has, like, the more chances you give the best player to win, the better. And that's kind of what you want. You want the best players to show up to worlds. Um, but my question to that is, again, I bet this is time constraint reasons too. But I don't know for sure. Is like, I, worlds format, last year was not best of three on day one either. And I think a lot of people would have preferred it to be best of three. But also, I think Japan is kind of used to this AB stuff. So I don't know. I don't know what's really going through their head when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Well, I don't think I mean, not like we directly get asked for feedback in the West. I feel like too much, or at least definitely not in Europe. But I think the consensus is from the West that we prefer best of three at that level. But they just, yeah, they do it how they want or how it's worked for them. They're the ones that kind of running the show now when it comes to Worlds, and probably will be entirely, given that it's now the third year in a row in Japan. It's all been post COVID. Uh, so yeah, I think it is more of a case of they just have found something they think works fine, and you're never going to please everyone, but it does the job. It does. Like I don't like if someone told me, you're gonna fight over whether it's best of one or best of three, I'd be like, don't really care to fight over this. I'll tell you which one I prefer. I can have a fairly strong opinion of it, but not enough that I'm gonna go to war over it, if that makes sense. So yeah. So I'm going to quickly touch on the other thing you asked, which was I completely forgot about, was the if Una was, or if the restrictions hadn't happened for this set, do I think people would play a Una deck every time, stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think it still goes back to the same thing. Even when you present them with the option of playing two decks, I still think there are going to be plenty of people that do what they want and don't play a dedicated Una deck. I think there would be a lot of Knights players, but Knights players can still play Una anyway. But it's one of those things. I feel like as a second deck, if you force people to play two decks without Una restrictions, set restrictions, there's still going to be more people that would be like, I'm going to play Knights with my one Una than I'm going to play Una.deck FF4 stuff. Um, but it would definitely gatekeep certain decks, I think, especially coming out of this format from being played. And it would also motivate, I think, a little bit more tech. Like there's the Vincent Legend in this set, the box topper,
Yep.
which I read and I was like, wow, that's a really, really anti-Una card. I wonder how we're going to have to deal with this. And then obviously everything got nuked before Vincent came out, and I got to kind of see that in action. Uh, but yeah, I feel like right now there's nothing so egregious that you're like, I have to play these big Donny Tech cards to beat it. I'm just going to kind of build my deck to be as strong as it can be generally into such a wide open field. I just think that's just how the game goes in general, whether Una was banned or not, Chaos was banned, all these things in the past, that either you're in a format where there is a best deck and you do have to start really thinking about those card choices and whether you want to tech for it, or there's a format like the one we're currently in right now, the meta game we're currently in, where it's so wide open that you just want to play your deck that you feel comfortable with in the most consistent way possible without messing too much with awkward deck cards.
Yeah, and I mean, we've only had a couple events here, so and also because of nationals formats being two deck, like you could argue we don't have very many more tournaments to like solve this format, right? But I also think that's kind of a good thing because it's, like, okay, the thing with two deck before, I feel like this isn't the case anymore because it's not best of three. But when you play a best of three with two deck, sometimes you can play two decks that share a weakness. Um, you know, like, oh, both decks are weak to Mist Dragon, or both decks are weak to Kuchulin or Amma, whatever. Um, and the opponent can only have one deck with that card in it, and that should be fine. As if your two decks can beat the other deck, which a lot of times, like, I guess an example would be like Mono Earth, um, at the Nats. That it was good here. Like, seriously, probably half the room had it as one of their decks, and everyone's like, okay, someone's gonna have Mono Earth, and then but I can't beat Mono Earth, but I can beat everything else. So they'd bring two decks that could beat everything else. You know, that
Yep.
was like a legitimate strategy, but we can't do that when it's best of one, um, in Swiss anymore, because like now there's risk. You know, uh, so that kind of took some skill out of that. I feel like too. But I will say, this is a little off topic ish, I guess, but like, the one thing that I really liked at Worlds that I hope they bring back, and I don't know if they're gonna do it for Nats. I'd be happy if they did. Day two, they timed 30 minutes per game. What do you think about that versus just an hour and 10 minutes? So like, and it mattered for me because, um, so me and Eureka played, and I think it was top four, and he's on Knights and Wind, and I'm on Chaos and Four Color Wall, and I win in like 5 minutes with Chaos. He wins in like 5 minutes with Knights, and then we have like Wind versus Warrior of Light, and we actually go to time with that 30 minutes. So in theory, if it was an hour and 10 minutes, we wouldn't have gone to time. However, in other games that I played, also like we used 25 minutes of the clock for every single game. So I wonder if they're gonna continue to do something like that, for Worlds and or for like Nationals, Euros. What do you think about that?
I think if time constraints an issue, which I think it is what they're thinking about, then it won't happen for Nats. For Worlds, yeah, I'm sure they'll continue to do it for the top cut. I mean, I think it makes more sense, like literally just from a mathematical standpoint. It's always been this kind of weird thing of, oh, so if it's best of one, you get 30 minutes, but if it's best of three, you get two lots of 30 minutes and then 10 minutes. What? It
Yeah,
doesn't really make any sense. So yeah, I agree with having it 30 minutes per round. It's almost that kind of chess clock mentality a lot of
yeah,
people want in certain card games, that everyone's playing with the same amount of time per game, so you don't have to worry about things like that. This random extra 10 minutes added on for a potential game three if the first two go all the way. So yeah, I mean, I like that, but I would never really have a problem with more time as long as it's not, you know, too much time, or not something someone can take advantage of.
yeah. And I'll say this too, like the match I mentioned with Eureka, like it mattered that we went to time because like I won in turns, and because I dealt six to him, and he dealt zero with Wind, and we got to a position. So I was playing Clive in that deck, and Ifrit and Threes Danes. If I'm recalling this correctly, it was like I would play like a board three times, attack twice, and then he'd board clear me three times in a row. Like, so that I got pushed that damage, but Wind doesn't have haste outside the Dane, So like he couldn't retaliate the damage back. And then when we get to that state, it's like, well, now I can just block, or like if he can't board clear a fourth time, I'm in a huge lead here, and he has to attack into a deck with a bunch of bursts, right? And it just changes the game dramatically if it was a best of three, hour and 10, or even hour and a half. Like it changes it dramatically, and I won basically due to time in that scenario. However, like the opposite worked for me in that tournament as well, because I've definitely played some best of threes where I used like the entire time, which is funny to say with Chaos, because I was playing Chaos as one of my decks. Funny thing, the entire time at Worlds, so like me and Lopez were on the same two decks, right? When we were playing our Chaos rounds, literally like after 5 or 10 minutes, he would be over watching, and he'd see me struggling every single time. And I'd like go close to time in every single round because I didn't hit very well, or I didn't draw very well, or like my opponent had like the counter nuts to it or whatever. And he gave me so much crap for that because he's just like, dude, it's just so easy, just hit, you know. And it's it's so funny how I was like, I had to struggle bus through it all, whatever. But like, you know, it was just one of those things I wanted to point out because I like the 30-minute per game thing because it doesn't get rid of the naturality of that's what you're supposed to have. Um, but it's also technically like abnormal. It's not what we normally get. So I was just curious on what you thought about that. Um, all right, this video is pretty long, but I guess we can end it there. Is there anything else you want to add on or bring up?
Thing in particular, I mean, I'm just, I don't know, I'm just honestly, as far as like going back to this Verstael, Lardin, Ultimecia, whatever you want to call it, pile of Kyle pile, this this KP, uh,
Yeah, there you go.
yeah, I'm just really glad that this deck, this archetype, kind of gets to see a resurgence. But I'm also just, yeah, I'm just glad at how diverse this format is. I think I'm the kind of guy that's actually normally quite happy for one or two decks to be on top throughout a couple of opus, but it feels like, man, ever since Four Color Wall came out, kind of felt like we were playing the same game for like probably like 18 months. And again,
Yeah,
I like Final Fantasy so much, I don't mind so much, but it was, even for me, it was starting to be like, all right, man, can we like do something about this? Can we speed up the next wave of kind of power creep, or just, rustle things up a bit with some restrictions? And then yeah, it's just kind of naturally done it, because if we take it as Una as like Opus 25 kind of didn't exist almost, um, then it's like, yeah, actually this set was the one that finally was like, okay, now you can go back to kind of doing what you want. And then naturally what will happen, I think, is that Opus sort of 27, 28, unless they continue to just make all these like custom cards for old archetypes, um, we're going to see it's kind of streamline again. We're going to have all this big wide open 26 and then 27, 28. The decks are going to kind of, yeah, get it tighter and tighter, and we're going to kind of know what we're expecting a bit more. I don't know, just that's kind of how it goes. I feel like a lot of these formats kind of work like it rotates itself. It's kind of perfect in the sense that the game doesn't need you to actually get rid of cards, because it just naturally kind of figures that out for itself. The players figure that out for himself, and I'm just, yeah. Long story short, I'm just kind of really happy with where we are at, as of today. I'm sure it's going to kind
yeah,
of stick like that for the rest of this set.
yeah. You said there was like basically there's no Opus 25. Like we basically transgressed, and I mean there's kind of no Opus 24 either. Like Clive was basically the only card that mattered, Clive Ifrit. Um, and it was the same decks. I think the only outlier is monsters came back. Like, I mean, maybe there's some other stuff, but like, that's the only one I can think of off the top of my head. And and monsters are good. Don't get me wrong, but you're right. It did feel like we've been playing the same game for a long time now, but this set feels like there's a lot of deck building that can get you far. And I mean, I think everybody would say that they think Warrior Light's probably the best deck, but I don't think it's like the best deck by a mile. Like it's not even close. Like and that feels good because like that makes me feel like every deck has a chance if you know it's a good deck, this is your time to bring it because like element of surprise is a thing, knowing how powerful it is and others not knowing how powerful it is a thing. Like that's the exact Verstail's the example here, right? Like uh and like the sky's the limit with deck building and stuff like that. Like I recently did some commentating with Sam Toole on Portland. They should have the videos up pretty soon. But like a player brought Dragoons, and I legitimately think that is like a pretty good mid-range deck now. Like the new Freya is really good. They have a new Dragoon backup. Like I don't want to sound like I'm trolling here. I legitimately think that deck has like legs now, and if Yuna's around, there's like no shot that deck has. If Cecil's around, I bet I don't know. Cecil is probably fine with Cecil, but like if Chaos was around, there's like no shot. Um, I just think that us getting that one turn back, like I said, the game just felt dramatically faster when Yuna was around and when Chaos was around. Uh, and now it took a step back, and look, you could still play in the like knights, or I don't know if warriors want to go handless or something. Like it can still exist, but also it has like consequences. Whereas with Yuna, that was the game plan. Like you don't always go off on turn one, but like you have, if you have the right cards, you can. So I definitely like where we're at right now for sure. Um, I guess on a closing note here, do you have a favorite card from the new set? Is it Idolus?
Uh, I think Edelaz is probably second. I mean, but I think Bart's is just the first for some reasons, very obvious. But yeah, I honestly, the crystal payoff thing was the biggest thing for me. I mean, I still don't think crystal dot deck is there yet. I think it's 20 something else, but I think just finally giving you a reason to generate all these otherwise pointless resources finally came around with Bart's, and yeah, I just like that again. That opened up a whole world of deck building for me. Like Edlas is great, but it's being played with these cards you see kind of on the screen, and then these FF15 ones is completely locked. You're playing it with Verstael and or Arden only. Whereas Bart's, I've got so many places I still want to put that, and I enjoy a card that is got that longevity in my deck building for my deck building juices for the entire kind of opus, and looking to kind of perfecting that. And maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's actually maybe it's not the what I think it is. But even if it's not, I'm gonna have a good time figuring out either way.
Yeah, it's definitely a card that's like. Well, actually, Viridian mentioned he thinks that Bart's is broken, and I have also been trying to find a deck, find out where it goes. I mean, dude, it's a pot of greed, like at bare minimum, it's a pot of greed. But you have to get the prerequisite with the crystals, right? So like, and obviously, Wall 7, people know it can go in there, but it's like, can it go anywhere else? Or in the future, will it go somewhere?
Yeah,
Because it's got a
exactly.
powerful effect. For me, my favorite card is the new Ferris. I'm not a very big like fire water gamer, but it checks so many boxes. I'm also not a very, even though I played Warrior Light at Worlds, I'm not a Warrior Light gamer either. But like it can be fine in there as well. Like it does so much, and it allows for flexibility and for you to make your deck the way you want to make it. And I just really like seeing cards like that. Um, it's funny. I like Ferris, but I don't like Tyvis. I think Tyvis is not the best design card, but I like Ferris a lot, and I think it's because Ferris cares about elements, and Tyvis is just a tribal card. Like you could put Ferris in like I don't know 10 different fire water decks, and it would probably still be good. So I really, and also the artwork's really sick. I'm pretty jealous that in Japan they have the trophy and the sleeves of this card. So maybe I'll have to pick up some
Agreed.
sleeves when I get there.
Not if I get them first.
Yo, you got all the full arts last time, bro. Didn't wasn't it you that bought like a lot of the cheap full arts?
Can you not bait me out like that, KP man?
Hey,
People come again my secrets.
if it wasn't you, it was gonna be me. So, alrighty. Well, thank you for coming on here, Mr. Cool, and I'll be seeing you here pretty shortly. But hopefully, you know, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. Hopefully, your tournament results in the near future are still running high. Hopefully, we get a first place. And wait, you got hang on, you got second because you were playing a KP deck. You know that, right?
That's correct. I got the highest I could possibly
That
achieve,
is
but
that is just
wasn't the
true.
only result I could. So yeah, when you actually think about it, it basically wasn't an achievement at all. Yeah, deck sucked. Next.
Oh man. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for watching, and catch you next time.
Safe. Stay cool.